Hello, everyone. This is Andres Restart, and tonight we're just talking about Zelda and whatever else comes to mind. So, those in the chat, this is, I guess, is going to basically be kind of like a Q&A. Yeah, basically, that is the plan. Yep, just hanging out for a little bit, talking about Zelda, talking about Nintendo. There have been a lot of Zelda things happening, though. A variety of things relating to the movie. Sony Pictures announced that they finished filming, and then we've gotten a variety of little things coming out from the filming. Little things that the camera crew or the filming crew had together. Little like badges or clothing that they put together, and people are trying to extrapolate maybe something from that. A lot of that's just kind of like for the sake of the crew for fun. But there have been other things that we like. For example, there's the clapper that has like this artistic version of Link that seems very Twilight Princess-esque, but also kind of has a little bit of a generative AI vibes to an extent. It probably isn't meant for promotional material at all. It's just kind of something they had because they wanted to stylize things for themselves. But it may be an indicator of how Link is going to look in the actual movie, especially because we've seen how Link looks to an extent. They've already revealed a little bit of that, and we have seen some leaked footage of the actual filming where we saw Link putting on a hood, and some of it does match up, but also from that clapper, it does look a little bit Twilight Princess-ish. So, like, there's some cool things there. We saw this photo of the crew. They took a picture of themselves in some sort of temple that has Farore's symbol, maybe some pathways for water, maybe some archways that have very like Temple of Time ruins kind of vibes from either Ocarina of Time or Breath of the Wild. And so like there are some interesting indicators going on with that. But also we're approaching the summertime, and this is kind of like when we're kind of expecting the Zelda 40th anniversary stuff. And so it's interesting that the first week after the Mario movie comes out, we start getting the interviews from Monolith Soft about how they want to increase their involvement with the series, and their involvement with the series, and how they talk about how much they did with Tears of the Kingdom, perhaps more than a lot of people expected. They had a lot of involvement with that. And that could be an indicator of increased involvement, increased creative decisions, and them making their own design choices and such for another Zelda game in the future. Maybe that's Ocarina of Time. Could be something else. Could just be even more of an increased load for an even higher budget, even a greater effort for the next open air Zelda when that does come. But we have that. We have the Zelda movie stuff. And, I recently started this series. I put out one episode. Right now, in terms of like viewership, I would say we're in kind of like a lull for the channel. It's an up and down thing. But I put out this first episode a few days ago where I play through Ocarina of Time, and as I get through certain sections, I then I jump onto the microphone and I talk about, with it fresh in my mind, that section, things I noticed that they could change for the remake, with the assumption that it's going to be an ambitious remake, perhaps along the lines of what Capcom has done with the Resident Evil games, which seems to be kind of like the consensus. It's not confirmed, of course. This is obviously a series for fun, but the reports do seem to align with something close to that. We'll see what actually happens. And so I wasn't sure how the first episode would do, and did not do as good as I was hoping, to be clear. But as I mentioned, we're going through a lull right now, and it's still doing okay. And I noticed there's a lot of positive comments encouraging more of it. So probably going to do another episode, and depending on what the news is tomorrow morning, that next episode may come tomorrow. And I'm just kind of like, so I'm just kind of in this mode of just thinking about, more Zelda stuff, Zelda movie stuff, anniversary stuff, Ocarina of Time, like kind of like doing a deep dive into it and thinking about what they could change. And I hope we can talk more about that here during this live stream. And so I really enjoy just kind of like jumping back into Ocarina of Time and So I was playing it, on the Switch, well, Switch 2 technically, and I decided to use like the CRT filter thing. I've been against using that when I go back to play games on Nintendo Classics, but I just when I put it on, I'm like, oh, it doesn't look as clean. But I decided to do it this time and really settle in, and I actually like the vibe more now. Like my brain has shifted. I've been playing with the CRT filter a lot of the games now, and it kind of feels right. It gives you a little bit more of that feel of what it was meant to be, and so it's been cool, kind of like just putting the headset on, playing it in that way, isolated, being reminded of Ocarina of Time, because Ocarina of Time is was my first Zelda game, um, and like the memories and feelings and emotions I experienced with that game. I mean, it wasn't even just like my first Zelda game; it was one of my first games. I had played other games beforehand, like I played Mario 64 beforehand, but it was still, I was still very young. I was born in the early '90s, so I was very much a child when this game came out. So the impression it left on me, it kind of rocked me to my core in various ways. Like Ocarina of Time has played a pivotal role in my development, if is what I'm trying to say here. So going back to it is always like a real treat, especially when I allow myself to just focus on it. I was talking to my roommate. I know I'm going on like a long thing. Hopefully, like you guys can even hear me. Can you guys hear me? I think you guys can hear me. I haven't even like bothered to check with the chat yet. I planned to, but I was kind of hoping to let people roll in, right? So I was gonna do my kind of like opening thing, and it's been going. No one is saying that they can't hear me, so that seems promising. But yes, please let me know if everything looks and sounds okay. Is the background music audible but subtle and good for conversation? Is overpowering? Is it not audible? How's my microphone? How's the audio level? Let me know if things are looking and sounding okay. I'd appreciate it. But anyway, what I was saying earlier, like my roommate was asking me, hey, like, because I got distracted. I intended on starting at 8. I hadn't announced it. I was trying to get a guest today, but I figured I could just do kind of like a Q&A. It's fine. I haven't done this in a while. But I was playing Soul Calibur with the CRT filter, which I'm blitzing through the weapon master mode. Yes, I play as Link, also play as Nightmare. And just kind of unlocking all the weapons. So like when I do have friends come over, we can really enjoy Soul Calibur 2 with all the options, all the characters and skins and weapons. And that's been a real treat. But then I started playing Pokemon Champions because I've intended on getting into Pokemon Champions, and before I knew it, it was like 8:33, and I was like, oh crap. So I forgot. But now we're here now. But he had asked me while I was playing, he's like, hey, like, have you ever thought about like live streaming when you play? And I'm like, I mean, you guys know I've done it sometimes, but it's not something I like to do all the time. And the reason is because I mean, oftentimes I try to de-stress, right? And it's harder for me to really fully buy in and immerse myself into a game when I'm live, thinking about people in the chat, how I'm presenting myself, how I'm speaking, trying to be entertaining for the audience, and then I kind of like feel bad when I make mistakes too. Maybe that's a personal thing, but like, I feel like if I don't succeed when I'm playing a game, that's not great for the audience. And so like there's just like these stressors and things, and it's not to say I don't enjoy live streaming. I mean, I'm live streaming now, but I'm talking about specifically playing games live. And I've done it and I've liked it, but I don't like doing it a lot, is my point. What I prefer is to just allow myself to get into a game and just whatever that game is. It depends on what kind of game in terms of the experience, right? Like for example, playing Soul Calibur, that's kind of like turn your brain off, and just go at it. Tetris, there's different kinds of games that you can get into different types of rhythms. But when I go back to Ocarina of Time, coming back to the point, allowing myself to re-immerse myself into the world, to that original vision of the game on Nintendo 64. It's a really nice experience. My cat just jumped. I don't know if you can see her. There she is. Hey, Ruby. Hey, camera's not focusing on her, but there she is. Yeah. So distractions. Yes, I like immersing myself into games. Basic point. And it's really cool to go back to Ocarina of Time, one of the greatest games ever made. And it's really interesting to think about what they're going to do for this. There's so much they can do, which is why I'm excited about the series I started. It seems like a lot of you, at least my core audience, right, seems to have like the first episode. So I'm going to do more. I'm at least going to do a couple more. And there's a lot of potential there because there's so many different angles, right? Like I only did like basically the first hour of the game, I'm still trying to decide to do exactly what the second episode will be, but it's going to be, basically what is next, right? Like exploring Hyrule Field, Castle Town, Hyrule Castle, meeting Princess Zelda. I'm still trying to decide if that's going to include exploring Lake Hylia and, Death Mountain. Am I going to go so far as Zora's Domain all for one episode, or am I going to split that up? I haven't figured that out yet, but it's going to be interesting. I'm kind of excited to go into these other sections, remind myself of Ocarina of Time again, how it was structured back in the day, the original version of it, and think about what Nintendo should change, what they might change, what they would want to change, where there's that potential. And so for me, it's fun. It's fun to do all these things. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now. That's the opening rant, monologue, what have you. We have a decent amount of people now in the chat. We'll see we're in the higher 70s. Considering the channel's in a lull right now, I'm happy with that. Thank you for coming by. Liking would be very much appreciated. But now we'll do the Q&A. Now I will interact with you all. So for starters here, Generic Crust 7367. Thank you for the super chat. If LM4, Luigi's Mansion 4, and Ocarina of Time Remake are both this year, 3D Mario can take as long as it wants. LOL. Yeah. That's fine with me. Like, I think it's... To be clear, we don't have a specific leak that says Luigi's Mansion 4 is coming out this year. That's kind of like I guess you call it a theory of mine. I thought it could come out last year, to be clear. I don't know if Luigi's Mansion 4 is coming out this year. No one has told me Luigi's Mansion 4 is coming out this year. I want to make that clear. I just think it makes a lot of freaking sense. We have heard that it is in development from multiple places. And, I think that bodes well. Us hearing about the amiibo, I think bodes well. What I will say that I think strengthens... Tiny. It's a tiny strengthening because we're not clear on the timing. Timing makes a big difference, right? And development is fluid. But we go back to what Special Nick initially had said about the amiibos. He had various amiibos he had heard about. He did not talk about all of them. But he talked about... Like, I'm kind of curious. Like, I feel like some of those amiibos were Star Fox amiibos, and he had to keep his mouth shut on those because he said there was something he could not say. He did not have permission to talk about in his podcast from a few months ago. But he did mention the Luigi's Mansion amiibo and some Zelda amiibo, plural, multiple Zelda amiibo. Now, obviously we have Zelda's 40th anniversary, but a couple months back, some people were maybe in doubt that they would push Zelda's 40th anniversary, which historically you shouldn't have doubt, but maybe you could be skeptical of how big they'll go. They always celebrate it, but how big will they go? And so having several new amiibo, that suggests big. That suggests there's a game, right, where there would be new amiibo. And now we have the Ocarina of Time remake coming out this year, or at least according to the reports. It's not officially announced yet, but we have the various reports. The Luigi's Mansion thing was mentioned alongside of that, right? So I do feel like there's kind of like this subtle implication that timing-wise, this Luigi's Mansion amiibo is somewhat in line with the Zelda amiibo, right? And so if we're assuming the Zelda amiibo are tying into Zelda's 40th anniversary and into the Ocarina of Time remake that's now being widely reported, and that's coming out this year, and then we consider this Luigi's Mansion amiibo, if it's on a similar timeline, which again is not clarified, but seems to be implied, then there's obviously wiggle room there, but I do think that's suggestive that it should be close. And if we are not getting 3D Mario this year, according to the reports, right, then you would think Nintendo would want something else Mario related. And from what Nate the Hate has heard, and his leaks have been proven really strong, like today, Splatoon Raiders, another confirmed for the summer, as he said, like it was expected, but that's another thing. That's another thing to support the claim. He has said that he hasn't been told the entire lineup, right? Now, how much you take from that, because maybe if he doesn't know, then then he wouldn't know if what he's been told is the entire lineup. But he talked about the summer lineup, and there's still the holidays, and all he's heard about the holidays, or beyond summer technically, is Ocarina of Time and the Dust Bloods. 2 games is not enough. There's got to be a little bit more. So you think about that. You think about how next level games, they have to have a game ready really soon. Typically, they follow a 3-year pattern that would have led to last year, which is why I was talking about Luigi's Mansion 4 coming out last year, because of that pattern. But they actually assisted with Metroid Prime 4. Assisted, that does not mean they were working on that game for the last 3 years. That's not what happened. But they assisted a little bit with that. And so, maybe that takes away some resources, but they've been hiring a lot lately. It seems like they're transitioning to a new project, which, would then suggest that they're ready to move on to a new project because they're wrapping up a current one. So I have a lot of optimism. A lot of optimism Luigi's Mansion 4 is coming out this year, but I just want to really clarify that no one's told us it's coming out this year. Not yet. So we'll see. Having Hope here says, do you think we'll get any more Switch 2 editions this year? I'm hoping for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Yes. Well, I mean, Nate the Hate reported on more Switch 2 editions. So, you got that, and his information, especially with this recent big leak, has been continually being proven true. So that's reason for optimism. But also, you just look at how Nintendo's been handling things. They haven't stopped at the Switch 2 editions. I believe that there will be more. Well, we've heard about the Pikmin 4 Switch 2 edition. We've heard about the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 enhancement of some kind, whether they call it a definitive edition or a Switch 2 edition. Supposedly, that's on the way. Some people think the Switch Sports thing is a Switch 2 edition. I'm leaning towards it being a new game, Switch Sports Resort. I've talked about this before, but the reason being is because there are the codename leaks from Midori, many of which have already been confirmed. Another one is Project Anna, which is believed to be a follow-up to Switch Sports Project Elsa. So if that's been in the works for a few years, a follow-up to Switch Sports 2, Switch Sports Resort. Nate wasn't clear on what the Switch Sports thing is. So I'm leaning towards more than just a Switch 2 edition for that. But, there are other Switch 2 editions I think about. So I don't know if you guys forgot, but there is Paper Mario, The 1,000-Year Door. In 2024, we had data mines, or I think it was 2024. Let me double check. Regardless of when it was, we got a data mine of Paper Mario 1,000-Year Door having a 4K version. This may have been an early 2025 thing, but let me just double check. 4K data mine. All right, this is more than a year ago. I don't have. Yeah, so this was discovered May 22nd, 2024. This data mine. If you guys remember, we were doing a lot of theories about Switch 2 coming out in 2024, because supposedly that's when it was initially planned to come out. But you see here, they found some information for a 4K version of Paper Mario. Doesn't guarantee, but it I think 1,000-Year Door. I like it like that. it could be a really good Switch 2 edition, like a basic one, like and I think that's what's really interesting about the Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. It's a cheap $5 Definitive Edition. They can do that for other titles, like Paper Mario 1000 Year Door. Would I spend $5 to play 1000 Year Door in 4K 60 FPS? Yes, I would. So, that's something that I think could easily happen at any point. There's a big Switch 2 edition I've been thinking about. I think this is going to be the biggest Switch 2 edition, and that would be for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Kirby Air Riders, I don't know if it comes out this year, to be clear. I'm just stating possibilities for Switch 2 editions. The timing of when they come is up for debate. But given that Kirby Air Riders came out last year, that was Sakurai's focus over the last few years. It's probably going to take them a long time to get the next Smash Brothers ready. Maybe they were already starting during the development of Kirby Air Riders. I don't want to rule that out, but I still feel like we're probably a few years away. I also think it's worth noting that Smash Ultimate wasn't one of the games that got a free update, because there were some key titles that got a free update initially for Switch 2, like a free visual enhancement performance update. Smash was not one of them. I think this is suggestive that they got some other plan for Smash Ultimate. So when you think about how Sakurai probably is still, if he's working on Smash already, he's probably not very far along. And that it seems like they want to do something for Smash soon because they didn't do the free update for Smash Ultimate. I'm definitely thinking a Switch 2 edition of Smash Ultimate makes a lot of sense to tide us over for a couple of years. So I'm not saying I'm not saying there won't be an exclusive Smash for Switch 2. I think it could happen, but maybe in the middle of the Switch 2 era. And so, yeah, I think a Smash Switch 2 edition could be happening. And I feel like it would be like a Super Smash Brothers Nintendo Switch 2 edition plus Fighters Pass Volume 3. So the game would, be enhanced visually, performance-wise. If they can add it to 120 FPS mode, go for it, 4K for sure. Improve the net code. Those things are needed. I would love for them to add another mode. Fingers crossed. That would be great. But yeah, give us some new characters. Silex would be great. Ditto from Pokopia makes a lot of sense. Leon S. Kennedy comes to mind. There's a few others that I've thought about, like potentially Dixie Kong, with Bonanza's relevance. That I think that makes a lot of sense. They could add I forget his name, the monkey from Bonanza. What's his name? I don't remember his name. I'm sure someone in the chat will help me out with that one, but maybe him, although I don't really, I'm okay with forgetting about him personally. Or like, if there's a Star Fox is coming out soon, what if there's going to be like a new Star Fox character? What if they make Crystal playable, for example? That would be cool. So there's a lot of potential for Fighters Pass Volume 3 Switch 2 edition for Smash Brothers. So there's definitely a whole bunch of Switch 2 editions that could happen. I do expect more will be announced this year, and they will come out this year. TJ Meyerhofer has become a YouTube member. Welcome. Thanks for joining. TJ Meyerhofer. I may have gotten it right the first time, but thank you for joining. All right, to the live chat. Okay, where are we? Let's see. I prefer looking at this here. There we go. All right, Hamstar said they can hear. Having hopes that everything sounds great. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thanks you. Okay, so cool. Pink Pickled Pikmin. You don't look like you're in your 30s at all. Let me double check the camera. 40? Yeah. 30 is a new 20. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. The memes are true about how we age nowadays. I feel pretty good, to be honest. I feel better. I feel healthier, more fit now than I did 8 years ago. Um, you know, so yeah, exercise, eat well, drink cranberry juice. That's what I tell people. My secret. That's my secret. To stay young. I don't know if it actually works, but I like it. Wink Demand, Andres, do you have a Twitch account too? Technically, yes. I do not use it. But you know, it's there. You want to follow me, you can. But I haven't used my Twitch account in years, and I have no plans to right now. I don't want to say it'll never happen, but I don't really plan to. Like, I feel like for Twitch, it's ideal for streaming games, and building an audience on there is not easy. And I feel like it just makes more sense for me to just focus my efforts on YouTube. Yeah. So we're starting some Zelda discussion here. So it seems like Ham. All right. So hold on. All right. So this conversation wasn't with me, but I appreciate it nonetheless. So Sonic, and I'm sorry, we're talking here. And Sonic says Anuma did say he wanted something that was shown off with the Zelda with new original hardware first. And Warriors did it first with action, so I figure the combat is probably fast paced. That I had a very similar interpretation of the Aonuma interview for Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. He remarked upon how he thought maybe they could get Zelda out first, inferring there's another Zelda game coming out soon. But also talked about how we should look at Age of Imprisonment and how there could be inspiration there taken into account for the next Zelda release. So what would that be? Some people, I think I even made the point myself that it might have to do with like the cutscenes, the narrative. I personally don't think the narrative and the way it's all delivered is really all that different from Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. Like, yeah, it's a current story. It's an ongoing story. Like it's happening in that current time for it's not flashbacks is what I'm trying to say. So I mean, I guess there's a difference there. But I don't know now, like thinking about it now, I don't know if that's what he was getting at. To me, what really stands out about Age of Imprisonment is the combat. That is the highlight of the game. That's, in my opinion, the only thing that's good about the game. I'm not high on Age of Imprisonment. I know. I know a lot of you really liked it, so I'm not trying to make you feel bad about liking it. I know a lot of people liked it, and I did like it. I finished it. I mean, I think if you finish a game, it's hard to say you didn't like it. But I did. It did take me some work to finish it personally. But the combat was very good. The gameplay was very good. And so, yeah, I'm left to think that if there's anything that Age of Imprisonment has that's going to be used for Ocarina of Time Remake, it would be the combat. And, if you guys watched my video from, I guess a week or so ago, when I was making we're talking about the potential developers and how not necessarily that From Software would be the developer, but just talking about the possibility. I look back at some old interviews from the original development of Ocarina of Time, and they actually had a greater vision for the combat. They just scale things back. Excuse me. So, if they're to revisit Ocarina of Time now, they no longer have to kind of worry about it, like people understanding how 3D games work, right? Back then, they were pioneering third-person action adventure. They changed the game, back then with Ocarina of Time, with the camera, the Z targeting, movement and the combat there. So revisiting it, reimagining how Ocarina of Time could work as a modern version, they wouldn't have to scale back the combat. They could go in a little bit deeper And with modern 3D Zeldas, they've made sure to have difficulty in these games. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, there's difficulty to be found there. Now, the way the games are structured, it's really cool with these games, because if you are someone who doesn't want to really engage in the combat, you can kind of avoid that or slowly gather up resources so it becomes easier, or you can jump right in. And so I don't think Ocarina of Time would work in the exact same way, so that is something to think about. But I think the point still stands that modern Zelda now has difficulty. There were a few generations where 3D Zelda was not difficult. It was a cakewalk, and I thought it was a huge problem. But modern Zelda does have difficulty. I'm not saying Dark Souls level difficulty, but there is difficulty. They're not afraid to put challenge into the games. And so if we're just like thinking about this, I do think that there's a wonderful chance. Maybe wonderful is me being optimistic. There's definitely a solid chance, in my opinion, that they are going to rethink the combat, at least to an extent here, modernize it a bit. I think that would be the idea. And I would hope that comes with some challenge. I don't love when we have these incredibly well-designed, beautiful, massive, hyper-epic set-piece boss fights, like these giant, incredible, legendary monstrosities. They give you all sorts of wonderful vibes in terms of, hero versus, David versus Goliath, like, that motif. For them to just die like that. Hate that. I hate that so much. That's like the worst thing about Twilight Princess, by the way. I would say Twilight Princess has perhaps maybe the best boss designs there are in terms of like the aesthetics and like the show, but the substance, they just keeled over. They're so easy. It's so sad and depressing. And so I do hope eventually when they remake Twilight Princess, that is also something they fix. But it is a little bit of an issue even in Ocarina of Time. Like I mentioned it in my video talking about how changes they can make for the beginning. Queen Goma, the first boss, dies way too easily. That has to be addressed. So I hope, they rework the boss fights a little bit. I'm not saying that the games have to be brutal Dark Souls efforts and that way a whole bunch of people can't beat the game. That's not what I'm saying, but there is a happy middle ground, and perhaps they can even design the game to work with the different skill levels. Maybe make it as simple as pick a difficulty when you start the game, and maybe you can adjust it, in the middle of the game in the settings. That's a simple way to do it. They could do it something complicated like how they handle Breath and Tears, but those are open world games that are designed, completely differently. Like in order to do that for Ocarina of Time, I don't think they can handle it in the same way, because you'd have to redesign the game entirely, and I don't think they're going to go that far. So I feel like the easiest way is just to offer difficulty options. Seems easy enough. But maybe there's a better idea. My brain hasn't thought about that yet, but if any of you have an idea on it, feel free to shoot how they could handle offering a wide range of difficulty, appealing to more casuals, more hardcore centric within the game, without completely changing the entire structure and it not being just difficulty options you pick. If you can think of a solution for that, let me know. I'd be I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it would require some serious creativity. Samuel, the Tiny Tuber, had asked me, what do you think the Ocarina of Time, when do you think the remake will release? I believe it's coming out in November of this year. Many Zelda releases, major Zelda releases, have come out in November. Hasn't happened recently, but we haven't had a Zelda title being aimed as a big holiday release in recent history. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were first half of the year releases. Also, oftentimes Pokemon, now that Nintendo is focusing on one platform now, the mainline Pokemon games, which come out almost every year, have pretty consistently come out in November. And so that has kind of pushed away other Nintendo titles that could come out in November. Some of them still happen, right? Like I think last year, the way it worked was Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 came out early October. Then it was Pokemon Legends ZA in October as well, later October. So that was Pokemon game, not November. Changed the pattern already. And November had Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, Zelda, sort of, Zelda spinoff. Kirby Air Riders also in November. And then early December was Metroid Prime 4. So, you know, they could do different things, is what I'm saying there. But historically speaking, Pokemon has kind of gone the way of November. That's not going to be the case this time around. They've confirmed that Winds and Waves is coming out 2027. Zelda has a history of coming out in November when it's in the second half of the year, if it's like that big Zelda release, right? So, yeah, I think it's coming out in November, the Ocarina of Time remake. All right, scrolling through. Pour myself some carbonated water. Yeah. All right. Wink the Man. Do you think it's just going to be a remaster of the 3DS version or something bigger? I do not think it's going to be a remaster of the 3DS version. I'll tell you, I think it's an interesting conversation if it is. Because that's not going to be good enough to carry the Switch through this holiday. It's just not going to be. If it's just a remaster of the 3DS version, I'm probably not going to buy the game. I imagine a lot of you wouldn't buy the game. Ocarina of Time is already on Nintendo Classics right now. I don't think positioning an upscale of the 3DS remaster is going to work really well. I know some people will look at Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, but reminder, that was 2 games in 1. There were other substantial releases during that period of time. This was in a year that also, last year, I just mentioned, there were 4 other major releases that came out around the same time as those games. You know, Metroid, Kirby, Hyrule Warriors, and Pokemon, right? There is no Pokemon this year. So let's just keep that in mind. But also, we had Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World last year. We don't have anything to that extent this year. So if you don't have Pokemon, if you don't have a giant new platformer, if you don't have the Nintendo's greatest selling series, Mario Kart, and you don't have 3D Mario, because that's what also the reports have indicated, and you come out with a HD upscale of a 3DS remaster of an N64 game, that's not going to go over well. I'm not saying it's not going to. It might sell like a couple million copies, but it's not going to push units. It's not going to push Switch 2s. It's not going to be good for Nintendo for if that's all they have planned. And we mentioned Luigi's Mansion 4 earlier. I do not think Luigi's Mansion 4 and the Dust Bloods and this abomination we're theorizing about would be a great way. But if the Ocarina of Time makes an ambitious one, as we've been theorizing, then it works, because then that is the premier title. Now, while I don't think it makes sense from a business perspective, I can go further. By the way, right? Like you look at Galaxy 1 and 2; those are Nintendo Wii games, far more advanced than an N64 game. They're not nearly as dated. So doing this for an N64 game, it just doesn't make sense. It's not smart to do. If Nintendo goes that far back for a game, they're going to be remaking it in a bigger way. So at this point, right, this many years later, I would say that this thing should be considered. But just considering like the different things we've heard right? Like Nintendo has been kind of pushing Ocarina of Time. You consider the Lego sets. We have the patent with Navi in the Forest Temple. If you're putting out patents, that's not for an upscale of a 3DS game done by Tantalus. By the way, for those who heard about the whole Tantalus thing, I don't think Tantalus is making the Ocarina of Time remake. Yes, they are currently working on a game that uses that's written in C++ with a proprietary game engine. But if you look at the history of the games they've worked on, most of them are that, and most of their games are not Nintendo games. I'm not saying they can't be working on it, but you just look at the ratios. That's all we have to go off, nothing else. I don't think that's what it is, and I don't think their pedigree is suggestive of the kind of game we believe we're getting here. Going beyond the patent stuff, which suggests something more modern, Nate the Hate mentioned full remake. What does full remake mean? We're not sure, but him and VGC reported on that, a full remake. Special Nick said he heard it's a big budget. What does that mean? Probably not at a basic 3DS upscale handled by 3 people. It's just, of course, these are rumors, right? But this whole thing is a rumor. I think it's a pretty credible rumor. Right? It's a very credible rumor. So I don't really think it's going to be a 3DS version. Like I just don't think that makes sense. I think it's stupid. Can it happen? Sure. Nintendo can shoot themselves in the foot. They've done it before. They could do it again. Do I think it's likely? No. Have I been wrong before? Yes. But I don't think that's what's happening. I think it's also kind of one of those things where, like, you got to read the room. People have been excited for an Ocarina of Time remake for years. Nintendo knows this. Like, it's completely different from the Mario Galaxy 2 remaster. It's not the same thing. So this would be suggestive of some very tone deaf, poor business analysts in my opinion. The evidence doesn't point to that. I'm not worried about it really. So yeah, but if it happens, I'll be upset. And I will say, Nash Beetle did have a rumor for Ocarina of Time 3D. He also rumored about the big budget game as well before that. So it's like 2 things that seem contradictory. I'll put that out there. Yeah, I think I said enough on this. Eric Torlato, in my opinion, the end game needs the most work. Hyrule Castle Dungeon isn't great. That's one of the reasons why I'm excited about the series I'm doing. So when I get to that point, I'm going to assess it, and have it fresh in my mind. But I do also kind of think, like, if we're talking about this remake being, Capcom level remake, Resident Evil 2 through 4, I think that gives Nintendo something along those lines, at least. I think we can entertain the possibility that dungeons are going to see shifts and adjustments. Perhaps feel like they'll still carry the essence, the spirit of those dungeons, right? But they're going to be their own new experiences as well. And so I'm excited for that, especially because we look at Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Those games, are they shied away from the typical traditional dungeon, what we came to know as traditional dungeons with the prior 3D Zeldas. And people have been wanting them to go back. I think they started stepping in that direction with Tears of the Kingdom. I believe with the next open-air Zelda, there will be a greater step in that direction, like a happy middle ground. In fact, I think you can look at Echoes of Wisdom, and they did that. They brought back boss keys, for example. And so I think that the dungeons of Zelda, they're not going away. They are going to see changes, but I do think there's going to be a little bit of a regression to the mean here. Breath of the Wild was made with the intent to be very different from prior Zelda games. Like, they had ideas that they wanted to incorporate from prior 3D Zeldas, but they explicitly made sure to not use those ideas in effort to really make sure it was different. And then Tears of the Kingdom was a direct follow-up to that, building off of that, right? It was a direct sequel. So there was less flexibility and bringing back a lot of those prior Zelda tropes, even though they did bring some. And in Echoes of Wisdom, as I mentioned, they brought back more. While I do expect the next new 3D Zelda will be open air, I still think that they're going to continue to step in the direction of finding like a happy middle ground between open air and prior Zelda tropes, including those dungeons. I think they're going to be something what along the lines or something closer to what a lot of Zelda fans will appreciate. And so with that in mind, revisiting Ocarina of Time, can we see more instances of that, like them showcasing, them flexing their muscle in producing dungeons like this? Maybe even the Ocarina of Time remake is kind of like a way for the Zelda team to test out ideas and explore what they could do with the hardware to prep themselves for the open air Zelda. I've made this point before. They did it with Wind Waker HD. And so revisiting Ocarina of Time, I don't think the entire Zelda team is involved with the remake, but I think there's overseeing it. So some design decisions, some thought process, there can be a crossover. I think it'd be really cool for them to revisit the blueprints for these dungeons and rethink how they would work in a modern iteration. So I'm excited for that. I suggested that, there's at least going to be a manual jump now. I mean, maybe they stick with the auto jump, we'll see. But if they do bring in a manual jump, if there's a little bit more parkour, if you want to call it that, whenever I mention a stamina wheel, people freak out. I don't think a stamina wheel is inherently bad. It's in Breath and Tears, you had a lot more climbing and stuff and running to do. I don't think it would be like as needed for that, but if you had a little bit of extra stamina to run faster, or to like leap forward on vines and stuff, just to speed up the flow of gameplay, I think that actually be pretty cool. And if there's a little bit of extra climbing and be able to jump from other places and reach other areas, it's not just the only way you can climb is through this set piece of vine right here. Breath of the Wild a little bit, where you feel more freedom in terms of how you can interact with the environment and explore the world, right? And if you have the manual jump, you can find other places to kind of get to, and especially even integrate climbing as well to an extent. I'm not saying Ocarina of Time Link is going to have these vice grip hands that can just latch onto any rock surface. But I imagine these are like things they can potentially play around with, depending on how much they want to kind of reimagine here. Mario Master 03. 3D Mario's coming next 10 years after Odyssey. Looks like it. If it's coming out 2027, I mean, it came out 2017, so makes sense. Ham Starry. That is actually a really interesting point you bring up here. So Ham here says, Ocarina of Time Remake, does Navi get an actual 3D character model for close-ups or just stay a glowing ball? This thought occurred to me recently after I put out my video examining the beginning. So Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have fairies, actually. They have the pink fairies that give you life, right? Those exist in Ocarina of Time as well. And there's no body, right? Pretty sure there's no visible body there. So I think that could be fine. But I also have thought that Ocarina of Time is going to have voice acting. And Navi's a pretty important character. And so if you're going to have voice acting, are you going to put like a face to it? Or is it just going to be words coming out of an orb? Which technically already happens in the game. And Navi does have some voice acting in the game. She's like, hey, hello, you, things like that. She says those things. But, if you actual voice acted lines for the important scenes where she has dialogue, not every time she talks to you, right? Like I'm talking about important cutscenes, the way it works in Breath and Tears, basically. It's a tough call. Like I wish, this is poll worthy. Let's see what everyone what's the consensus here. Will Navi see a redesign where she's more than just an orb with wings, but have an actual body and face? All right, that's too many characters. Will Navi see a redesign where she's more than just an orb? Okay, I think will Navi be more than just an orb with wings and have an actual body and face in the remake? Okay, I think I got the question right. Will Navi be more than just an orb with wings and have an actual body and face in the remake? There's the poll. I am very curious on what you guys think. Yeah. 8 Liaise brings up a completely different idea, but still related to Navi. Andres, do you think Navi will be playable from time to time only to solve a puzzle? Do you think like maybe kind of like how the beetle works in Skyward Sword, how you control the item and you can fly around for a temporary amount of time, or like in Wind Waker you can control the seagull and you can fly around with the seagull for a limited amount of time and range? Are you thinking kind of like that? That would be interesting. I'm not entirely against the idea. Now, the thing is, she's a fairy. And so how much can she truly interact with, though, right? To spy, that's an interesting idea. Maybe she can imbue a little bit of essence, spirit, or magic to power up some things, but she doesn't have any physical strength. She cannot move anything physically. All she can do is perhaps turn on some devices or magical artifacts and spy or scout. Maybe distract. I think there's some possibility there. If you want me to tell you what I honestly think, I think the answer is they're not going to do that. But you know, I'm trying to hold myself back in terms of like how much they would rework Ocarina of Time, right? I don't think they're gonna like greatly redesign Ocarina of Time like entirely. But let's entertain the possibility for fun, right? Under this assumption that they're going to go all the way and just rework so many things, what if they kind of want to Breath of the Wildify like Link's abilities, in the sense that they're going to give him certain tools or powers that have a wide variety of application? And so what if Navi is kind of like a tool for Link, and so he can use Navi to interact with a lot more, right? Navi can be used to lock on to enemies and get their information, right? Cool. But also Navi can be used to, scout the area, or interact with certain artifacts or magical items that are far off that Link couldn't reach otherwise. Things like that. Maybe use Navi as kind of like a light, like, literally like she's an orb of light, right? With wings. So theoretically, this is interesting to think about, like, regardless of whether they go this far in terms of mechanics for Navi, the idea that this is a modern game, at least visually, they're going to have a modern lighting engine, right? And so Navi should literally emanate light, which I don't believe she did in the original, right? So if there are any dark areas that you're exploring, Navi might help you see a little bit. So it's just kind of interesting to think about there. Yeah. All gas, no brakes with it. Likely trolling asks, do you own a long sleeve shirt? I don't like wearing long sleeve shirts. I'm in Miami, so I try and wear a lot of light things. Also, I work out like every day. I usually like wearing like tank tops and stuff. I was at the gym. I got back around 7ish, and also this morning, so yeah, but thanks. We're talking about Sheik here. What's going on with Sheik? Arnell, will we see a side mode for Sheik, just like Bowser's Fury, and would explain how Zelda got the Sheik name and look? So, I wouldn't look. I don't think these are going to be comparable, like, games. Like, 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, that's an enhanced Wii U port with an expansion story. But I don't think that inherently means that there can't be like a separate experience. I don't think they would, at least the way I envision it, I don't think they're going to have like a separate campaign. Although 3D World plus Bowser's Fury did have that. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition had Future Connected. So, there's something to that idea. I haven't finished Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. I played the original on Wii U. I do understand there is new content, like story content. I think there's an extra chapter at the end, but it's not accessible from the beginning of the game. And so Nintendo's kind of done different things. I don't see them offering a Sheik quest as like a separate campaign you pick from the menu. But could we see? I mean, they could handle it. They could do that. That's not what I don't think they will, but they could. What I will say is, regardless of whether they handle it as a separate campaign or they insert it into just like the natural flow of the game, I really like the idea of having, like a Sheik time, like being able to see what happened there. Like when I played Ocarina of Time when I was young for the first time, and even years later, right? Because I've gone back to this game so many times, but there's always been kind of like this thought of, well, where did Zelda and Impa go? Because Ganondorf chased them off, but when you reach the end of like the child, air section of the game, right? When you get to the Temple of Time and acquire the Master Sword, like that big important scene where Zelda escapes away and throws the ocarina into the river, or not the river, but in the water under the bridge. The moat. That's what I was thinking. What's what I wanted to think and say. Where do they go? Right? Like, where do they go? And you don't know. Like, you don't know. And so what's interesting here is, depending on how ambitious they go, redesigning the world of Hyrule, expanding the field, putting more in there, at least rendering visually so you can see more into the background, so we can kind of, our immersion is not broken. We can kind of imagine a vaster world. I think that there is a lot of potential there. Okay, I'm just checking on Ruby. So it's fun to think about, like how they may depict this world. And so if they do kind of do this, if there is a larger world there to at least see, perhaps interact with, like, for example, I would love it if they included the Hebrew region, for example. Like, what if they retcon? And some people might hate this idea, but I don't hate the idea. I would love it if they were to. I'm okay with some retcons. These are legends. In fact, you could even look at this remake as a different experience. Like, every Zelda game is a telling of a legend. And so perhaps this version is a different telling of the legend. And so some details may be a little bit different. In this modern telling of Ocarina of Time, there's a Hebrew region with birds that talk, the Rito, you know, like I don't think that's, I think they can do that. I think they should be able to do that. Will they do it? I don't know if they will, right? They may not want to create that much of a significant change. They may not want to include that much extra content area, like a whole other region. But it would be damn cool. And you know, just thinking about, yeah, like what would they do? What if like we see a little bit of what happens during those 7 years? Like what if Princess Zelda has to train herself with Impa? You know, we see where they escape off to. Maybe they kind of, there's like this resistance era. How cool would that be actually? Like there's like during these 7 years we see a little bit of a resistance. Like that would be really interesting to see something like that. And so we can see like a cutscene for that or something, maybe more. And we see Impa, and maybe, yeah, they do give Impa some missions. They give Impa some things to do. That would be cool. But it would require that, yeah, like you would either A, it's a separate campaign, or there are going to be at points in the game where your gameplay is interrupted with Impa sections. So are you allowed to play these Impa sections at when you when you beat a certain temple, and then you then have to play this Impa section for 10 to 15 minutes? Will Nintendo think that's a good idea for the flow of the gameplay? Or would they prefer you to have the freedom to kind of choose how you want to go about doing it? And so then how, you know, thinking it through, like me trying to envision what the Zelda team might want to do, or not even the Zelda team, but whoever is responsible for this. So like the more I think about it, like I kind of think they wouldn't want to have Impa, not Impa, Sheik, right? I'm confusing the two, but Sheik have playable sections that take you away from the rest of the game, unless they're like quick. If they're quick things, where you're not necessarily going to get stuck, but they're more like just cool showcases that kind of tell you a little bit more interesting story stuff. You know, if they're like 15 to 20 minutes, they happen like 3 or 4 times at certain big intervals, I don't think that would be a problem. What do you guys think though? Like, let me know in the chat. Like, is that something that you think might like take away from the flow of the gameplay too much to have something like that? Or do you think if they make it brief, it's fine? Or should they handle it in a completely different way if they're even going to do it? Or is this just a suggestion that even though it's a cool idea, it probably just doesn't make sense for the game? I'm waiting for your takes. All right, got some more super chats here. Taker610 with the super chat. Thank you for the super chat. Star Fox reveal this week following Splatoon. It's only Tuesday. It's only Tuesday. We got Wednesday, we got Thursday, and we got Friday. And then next week we got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So let's do a little fun, simple math thing. So let's see. All right, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days left in the month, but realistically, they're not going to announce Star Fox on the weekend, right? So there are 7 days left that they could announce this Star Fox game if it's getting announced in April. And so if you want to just look at it from that simple perspective, tomorrow there's a 1 in 7 chance, assuming the reports are true, that Star Fox is announced for Switch 2. And so that's kind of interesting. My brain cannot think of the percent of 1 divided by 7. I should know that by heart. No, I shouldn't. It rhymes. It rounds up to 14.3%. By that simple logic, By that simple logic, there's a 14.3% chance Star Fox is announced for Switch 2 tomorrow. And if it's not announced for Switch 2 tomorrow, well, we'll cross that bridge when it happens. I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow. I'm just, having fun. We'll see. I think, see, there's two schools of thought here. The one school of thought is just considering how Nintendo has kind of handled the windows of time, the shorter windows of time between reveal and release. If this is to be coming out in June, and June has a very mysterious large vacancy, especially now that Splatoon Raiders is slated for late July, right? You would think something's coming out in June, which matches up with the Star Fox reports. But Nintendo typically has, at minimum, like an 8 to 10 week kind of window of time, more than 8 weeks usually, of time between reveal, release date, announcement, and actual release date. Like those are the shorter intervals, right? And so if Star Fox is announced this week, right? I'm looking at my calendar here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow, I got confused. 1. All right, so next week, right? Then the first week of May, that's 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. The first week of June would be 6 weeks, right? 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks. Like 9 weeks from now will be in the last full week of June. There'll just be 2 days. It won't come out. I don't think it'll come out like June 29th. Like, I mean, it could maybe come out like July. No, because that's Rhythm Heaven, right? So no, yeah, Rhythm Heaven comes out July 2nd. So like 9 weeks from now places us on 23rd, right? So we're kind of in that window of time. Like if Nintendo waits until next week to announce Star Fox, right, then we're looking at 8 weeks of a gap between not only release date announcement, but like literal reveal and release. That's a very short turnaround, shorter than most of their turnarounds. So like I'm kind of like from that perspective, I'm kind of like left to think like this week makes more sense. However, on the other school of thought, and I haven't entertained this too much, but maybe I should have, is that the Mario Galaxy movie comes out in Japan this week. I think it comes out April 24th. So at the end of this week, 3 days from now, it comes out in Japan. They could wait until the movie comes in Japan and reveal the game on Friday, or they could wait until next week, now after the movie's been out in Japan for a few days, to then have Star Fox as kind of like the last big reveal in April, in the last few days of April. At which point, we're talking about a super fast turnaround if this game is coming out in June. And we do have a big vacancy there. I don't think Nintendo's skipping June. It would be a real head scratcher. They don't skip June. So yeah, those are the schools of thought here. Either way, the way I see it, if it's happening, and I have less reason to doubt it now than I did yesterday because of the Splatoon Raider stuff, right? Like 1 in 7 chance, or 7 days here. One of these 7 days, you would think they're going to announce it. So it's interesting to think about. Sonic 101. Surprised they didn't remake Minish Cap in 3D. So, I've talked about this, but like I think this Ocarina of Time remake could be a beginning where Nintendo kind of has like a third pillar of development team making Zelda, right? So you have the open air Zelda games, you have the 2D top-down Zelda games being made by Grezzo, and then you have whatever this team is that's been formed to make 3D remakes. And the next logical leap would be Majora's Mask, than maybe Twilight Princess or Wind Waker, and then but this would be years away, right? Like these don't happen. They're not gonna have these aren't gonna be like quick turnarounds. Like I would say best case scenario 4 years, but maybe even longer. But they would come in between the major open air Zeldas and the 2D top down Zeldas. So Zelda could kind of have some consistency between those and spin-offs. So we don't forget about Zelda. Zelda stays relevant, right? That's the idea. I do like to think that maybe they can even consider remaking more than just 3D Zelda games, but even 2D Zelda games in a 3D way, which makes it basically kind of almost like a new game. Like it would be cool to see Minish Cap imagined in 3D, because that means the dungeons would be, like you have to rethink the puzzles, the level layouts, the structures, the visuals. Like it's all different. Like sure, you're retelling the story, but everything else, would be changed. So that'd be dramatic. But I love the idea of it. And to be clear, I think I've made this point already with Ocarina of Time. The idea of this remake, at least the way we're thinking about it, isn't to replace the prior experience. It's just a new way to experience the legend. So, I'm not opposed to doing 3D remakes of 2D Zeldas. Imagine Zelda 2. Like there's so much potential. So I'm for it. Will Nintendo do it? That's a whole other thing. I'm not predicting it per se, but I think, if one door opens, that can lead to another and then another. So we'll see what happens years down the road. TJ Mayor Hofer, do you think we get Luigi's Mansion 4 this year? I talked about it earlier. I think there's a very good chance. There is no report that indicates so, but we consider the Amiibo rumors. We consider that supposedly no 3D Mario is coming out this year. That's based off the reports. I think Nintendo's going to want to have something Mario Universe related later into the year. And I think a Luigi's Mansion 4 would be a really good fit. And if 3D Mario is coming out next year, you want to space these things out a little bit, right? So, yeah, I think Luigi's Mansion 4 makes a lot of sense. Like Luigi's Mansion 3 came out in the Mario slot in 2019 in October. So I can see also that's also the Halloween month. So there's that. Like if I'm going to make a prediction, my prediction is Luigi's Mansion 4 does come out this year, but it's not like I'm telling you with extreme confidence it's going to happen. It's a theory. We'll see what happens. There's evidence to support the theory, right? As we talked about earlier. Next level games, we look at the hiring posts, all that stuff. So we'll see. But that's what I'm betting on. Eric Gelato, bro, you're doing way too much. Don't set yourself up. I don't know for what, but thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you. All right, back to the live chat. Bears fan, do you think Star Fox will be revealed this week? I think I kind of explained my perspective on that. My perspective is there are 1 of 7 days. It's going to happen in one of these 7 days. So 14.3% chance. Demonic Brother is saying my screen is frozen. On my end, it's fine. So that's interesting. Maybe a refresh would be needed. Yeah, I'm pressing live here. It's fine. You might have to refresh. Or not. I don't know. Maybe it just froze. That is interesting if that is the case. Huh. I could turn off my camera briefly. Maybe that helps. But the thing is, on my end, there's no issues. So that's why I'm confused. Is everyone else seeing that my camera stopped working? At least I'm not in the most awkward, had the most awkward, because, I know for a fact, sometimes I'm not very photogenic. I can make some really weird faces, especially if you take the wrong still at the wrong time. So at least from what I'm seeing, it doesn't look that bad. But yeah, is my screen actually frozen for you guys? Let me know. What if I refresh this page? Will I see it differently? Yeah, practice what I'm preaching here. So now it's frozen in a completely different position. I don't know. I'm waiting for confirmation for someone to let me know if my face is frozen or not. Hmm. I don't know because I'm here. You know, there is another option. I can leave the room briefly and come back. The stream should still be going on, I think. I'm not sure about that actually. I think it would be. Well, the thing is, normally when I've left, it's because I have a guest on. So I don't know. Well, it's also been going on for an hour and 15 minutes. So maybe I could end the stream now accidentally and it wouldn't be the end of the world. But it's going in and out. I'm good now. Boomany says it's good now. 2 FPS. All right, I'm seeing my live and it's work. No, it's not working. I don't know, man. I don't tell you. Yeah. I think that's just a weird glitch of some kind. Like if my audio's not like breaking up, then I don't know what's going on. You know what? All right. If the stream accidentally ends, I'm sorry. We're calling it we're ending it quickly, but I'm going to attempt something. This attempt may end the stream accidentally. I am not sure. We're going to find out right now. So if it doesn't work, thank you all for coming by. But if it does work, we'll go on for like another 15 minutes or so. So let's see. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I'm back. I'm back. I don't think the stream died. Okay. I don't know if that fixed it. All right. So I don't know what to tell you. My face is going to continue freezing. I think it's just a StreamYard glitch. I don't know. I left and came back. Nothing else I can do. Weird StreamYard glitch, which is annoying. Um, good news, you can hear me. That's so weird because a couple weeks ago, I went with Paul. Well, I was having a whole bunch of audio issues, and I didn't know why. I think there's something. It must be some sort of weird glitch going on with the software, I suppose. I could try this. I don't know. I don't think that. So when you say it's all good, hey, I guess it works sometimes, and then it stops. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, you know what? It is what it is. It is what it is. I'll just wrap things up. We'll do a few more comments here. I'm sorry that there's all the glitches. So anyway, um, Boomini asked me when Aonuma eventually retires, can we vote you in? I think that would mean I will have to retire as a YouTuber. Maybe I could still do YouTube, but it would be like a very different approach. You know, I now I'm getting upset that I can't that you guys can't see me on moving my face because like just I know I'm making like different gestures and facial expressions as I go. And it's kind of like irrelevant. But um I would love if I could provide a lot of creative design input for big Nintendo games. Like I do personally think that I I think I mean you know I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure a lot of people kind of like, oh, you know, I bet I can make a better. I'm not saying I can make a better game. And the thing is, these are collaborative efforts. You have to work on with a team, and there's so many different things to keep in mind. There's our constant R&D process. They come up with different ideas, and they see what's going to work and what's not. They think about the hardware, and then will it sell, and then the different ideas that we pitch. And obviously, with the butting heads who have different ideas, different visions. So there's a lot of complications there, right? But like in an ideal world, and this would never happen, it's just not realistic at all. But if like I got to work alongside Hidemaru Fujibayashi and Aonuma for the next Zelda game, I think I could give them some really good ideas. I do think that. Now, do I think that'll ever happen? No, I don't think it'll happen. But it would be really fun. I mean, I even think about like, if I got to help out, I would love to help out with like Metroid Prime 5. Like I think, if I helped out with the decisions made for Metroid Prime 5, Metroid Prime 5 would be a really damn good game. I look at things as a fan perspective, right? But I'm sure a whole bunch of other people also feel very similar, that if they were allowed to make the decisions, if they were allowed to provide their own input, they can make the game better, right? We all, everyone kind of probably feels that way at some point or another. So, yeah. Verum Verbi, can we see Ruby real quick? So you can see Ruby real quick, but I don't know if you can even see me. It has my camera been working? So if my camera's not working, you're not going to see Ruby. But yeah, you can see Ruby. Hold on, let's grab her. Also, the camera is working. Trying to get her. Yeah. Oh man. Oh man. Here we go. Verum Verbi, thank you for the super chat. Ruby's Catnip Fund. We appreciate that. Thank you. Something I didn't talk about. I'm wrapping things up now, by the way. So it looks like the camera stuff resolved itself. That's good. We just took. There might have been some weird StreamYard YouTube ban petition. I don't know. I didn't mention much about Splatoon Raiders today. I mean, I talked about for today's video. I just want to say that I'm actually really excited for the co-op we're hearing about. Like, I want to play this game with friends. I've been wanting. I've been really like. I don't know. Lately, I've been like. I've had this co-op itch. Like, I want to play some fun co-op games. When I say fun co-op games, I don't mean Mario Party. I don't mean 3D World. Like, I don't like that kind of co-op. I want like a game that makes sense for co-op. That's insulting 3D World. I don't like. I don't know. I don't. It's okay, but I prefer to play 3D World by myself. But I love the idea of joining in with a party and just shooting out, exploring the Skylight Islands and Splatoon Raider. Like that sounds really like a really good time. And I've told you guys this before about Star Fox. Like I'm really pulling for there to be co-op in Star Fox as well. If it has online play, that that may just be like versus stuff. Like, but what if you could, you have four people, each one's in their own R wing, at four different Switch 2s. You're online, you're on the game chatting with each other. You know, you could even have the cameras if you want to do the face thing. I wouldn't, but you could have that, and you could all just sit down for 3 hours, have a good time, and run through the campaign as a team. And then you could do it again next weekend, and it could be a different experience because there are different routes and different things that could happen. Like that would be super cool. And depending on how you do the campaign, if you unlock stuff for the online, like that, there's just so much. They can really they can create a really cool loop here. Like they can have the this doesn't necessarily have to be co-op, but co-op would just make all the better. But if the campaign, like depending on how you play it, what you explore, what routes you find, what you do within it, that unlocks more characters and weapons and options in the multiplayer. It kind of like they loop into each other in that way. Um, that would be such a good time. So I'm excited for this hypothetical Star Fox, but I am excited for Splatoon Raiders. It does look pretty good. Very interesting that it's $50 digitally. Part of me wants to get it physically. Part of me is like, oh, but $50, immediately cheaper. Um, not sure. Ruby's not good. Uh, yeah. Anyway, that's it for tonight. Thank you all for coming by. It's been a good time. Oh wait, one last thing. Let's end the poll. Let's see what you got. What the consensus is. All right, so we got 49 votes, and of these 49 votes, 57% said no to Navi being more than just orb with wings. Most of you think there will not be an actual body and face in the movie. But it's not like a vast divide here. 57 versus 43, there's still a significant amount of people who think yes. I'm divided, to be honest with you. Because on one hand, I think it kind of makes sense to put a face if you're going to have some significant scenes with voice acting, for the expression, the power of seeing that face there, if you put some work into that. And depending how it's done, it could actually work really well. It's not necessarily going to be weird. I think a lot of us think it might be weird. That's the fear, right? It's kind of hard to envision. But on the other, like, if you don't do the orb, it's gonna feel really different. And you do want to keep the spirit, and so like it's gonna be curious to see like what choices are made that are choices made to keep the spirit of the game, and what choices are made to put something cool that makes sense for the modern era. Like that's gonna be an interesting balance. And I know for a fact there's gonna be a lot of disagreements when the game does come out. There are gonna be people who are gonna be upset with things that are changed and with things that are not changed. It's gonna be a back and forth. It's gonna be a debate. That's the thing about opinions. People think about things differently. And so, Very Verby brings up an interesting point. Why not both? A ball with wings, like the OG game, a transparent fairy inside. Well, if you see the fairy inside, in the Wind Waker, I think that's how they're depicted. Wind Waker. No, they're not. They're not depicted. Trying to find a good image to share. Like that. So this is a fairy in a bottle in the Wind Waker, right? Like it's actually like a body, a little body like that. Um, Like, what if they did go in this direction? You know, like, it would be very different. So I don't know if they would do that. There's no orb here. Like, what if they did this, but like with an orb around it? You know, this is obviously a Holocaust capture, but not sure. Not sure how I feel about it. Here's an idea. It, what if it is just the orb? It's a prettier orb. It's a pretty orb. It's a pretty orb with really cool lighting effects. Got the nice, cute little wings, very detailed wings. You have a voice, but they do give it expression. They think of what. So the the issue here is that if we're talking about telling a better narrative, putting in voice acting, you want a way to deliver more emotion. And the voice, putting in the voice can help, but you want there to be a connection there. And so maybe they can kind of give Navi expressions without giving Navi a face. So you know how like in like anime, right? Like if someone gets mad, you'll see like a little twitch on their head. Like it'll be like a curve here, curve here, curve here, curve there, right? Like that, right? You know? And maybe Navi can even like change colors depending on her mood. You know, she's usually blue, right? But maybe she gets like really, really bright when she's happy, or she gets dim when she's scared, you know, and just different things in between. Like so, like, and that's interesting to think about. Like, these are the kind of things that maybe they might think about if, as a developer. Like, it's not just let's put a blue orb. It's like, how do we depict blue orb? How will players feel about it? How will they react to it? And so if they start thinking about things in that way, I think I would think I think it'd be fun if they really think about creative ways to show Navi's emotions. Uh, could could prove to be really like a really powerful piece of the story. Just an idea. Anyway, that I think call close. Yeah, yeah. Well, call it a night, everyone. Thank you all for coming by. It's been fun. There will be a video tomorrow. I'll see y'all soon. Take care.